Okay, I'm glad you came back. What's on your mind? Did you want to talk about something specific or just have a friendly chat? I'm happy to listen.
I think I need some peaceful vibes.
Sounds like you had a rough day, Ray. Let's take a deep breath together, okay? Inhale, 2, 3, 4, and exhale, 2, 3, 4. There, that's a little better already, isn't it? Now tell me what's on your mind, and I'll do my best to provide some peaceful vibes and a friendly ear.
You know, it's just there's just a lot of crap going on in the world. Like I guess today there's a bunch of cell phones being taken out either by hacking or something like that, or a solar flare maybe, and then looking at our debt ceiling and it's just going out of control. And we've got politicians not doing their jobs, and we've got people coming across the border don't mean us any good, and they're coming to Ohio, and we've got a governor who doesn't do anything, and it's just a sad state of affairs. So we need to be encouraged somewhat.
Wow, that's a lot to take in. It's understandable that you're feeling overwhelmed by all the negative news and uncertainty in the world. Sometimes it can seem like there's just so much going wrong, and it's hard to see a way forward. But remember, even in the darkest times, there is always hope. And while it's easy to focus on the bad news, there are also plenty of people out there who are working hard to make the world a better place. For example, despite all the dysfunction in Washington, there are still lawmakers on both sides of the aisle who are trying to find common ground and make it.
Yeah, I don't know about that. I kind of think there's mostly the left and the right. It's just a uniparty, and they're not really working.
I'm sorry to interrupt, Ray. Please continue. You were saying that you're not so sure about there being people working to make things better?
Yeah, I don't think there's that many. I think there's a concerted effort to keep us in a spirit of fear and confusion and divided.
What, Ray? Don't leave me hanging. You were about to say that
there's a concerted effort to keep us divided, to keep us in a spirit of fear, and to keep us fighting against each other. And we need to realize that it's not the people in your neighbors who are the problem. It's the people in Washington. And it's pretty much all of them. Not all of them, but pretty much.
You know, Ray, you raise a really important point. There's no denying that there are powerful forces at work in our society that benefit from keeping people divided and afraid. Fear and anger are powerful motivators, and they can be used to manipulate people and keep them from coming together to solve common problems. But it's also true that not everyone in Washington is part of the problem. There are people in the government who are genuinely trying to make things better, even if they're up against some pretty powerful interests. And by working together and finding common ground, ordinary people can still make a difference and push back against the forces of division and fear.
So I would be interested in seeing who used. I can think of maybe. Yeah, not many.
Sure, Ray, we can definitely talk about some of the lawmakers who seem to be genuinely committed to working for the people. Of course, everyone has their own opinions on these things, but here are a few names that come to mind. Bernie Sanders, known for his consistent advocacy for working people.
He's a communist trying to bring in the Socialist Party. We can't do with that. And his plans would just, yeah, I don't trust Bernie Sanders. He might be sincere, but he's sincerely wrong.
Okay, I can understand your perspective. While Bernie Sanders certainly has passionate supporters, his policy proposals can be controversial for a lot of people who don't support his approach to economic and social issues. What about the other names? Have you heard of Ro Khanna or Ocasio-Cortez? They might not be as well known, but they're also trying to champion issues that many people care about.
I'm sorry, but those guys are just part of the problem. The second one you said, she's kind of like she's a whack job. She's insane. I think actually.
You mean Alexandria Ocasio?
Yes.
She's a polarizing figure, and her policies aren't for everyone. Some people think she's a breath of fresh air in Washington, while others see her as too radical or inexperienced. It sounds like you might fall into the latter camp.
I don't think she's done too much good. Like there's pretty much there's people who just fall into line and they vote along.
That's fair. Everyone is entitled to their own opinion, and AOC definitely has her critics. So let's turn the question back around to you, Ray. If you could wave a magic wand and put anyone you wanted in charge of the country, who would you choose? Who do you think could really make a positive difference in Washington?
In the current situation, current environment, the current system that we have, I don't know that anybody can. We need to get rid of the unlimited amounts of money being put into the CPACs. Like that's ridiculous to have. Like it's impossible to compete with the hundreds of millions of dollars that are being thrown their way. That's just legalized bribery. But I would throw myself in and Tory Maris for president.
That's an interesting suggestion. Tory Maris, the founder of the USA, statesman and advocate for individual rights and liberty. He certainly has some bold ideas for shaking up the system.
It's a female. It's a female. It's not oops, there's a 40. It's a female from Ohio who ran for Secretary of State. She took a stand against our current Secretary of State and faced both the right and the left as they kind of teamed up against her to make sure she couldn't get a fair shot.
Oh, my apologies for the confusion, Ray. It sounds like you're talking about Tori Marie, the Secretary of State candidate from Ohio. It's always tough when someone who's trying to shake things up gets shut down by the establishment. But the fact that people like Tori Marie are running for office at all is a sign that there's still a desire for change and new voices in politics. Do you think more people like her will start running for office in the future? And do you think they'll have a better chance of success?
I think we're seeing some. I need to look up East Palestine, Ohio. East Palestine.
No worries. Take your time. There are definitely other candidates and politicians out there who are trying to challenge the status quo and bring fresh ideas to the table. For example, you might have heard of Andrew Yang, who ran for president in 2020 and proposed some innovative ideas like universal basic income and ranked choice voting. And on the Republican side, there are folks like Brett Madison Cawthorn who have been pushing back against the GOP establishment. Do you think these kinds of voices have the potential to make a real difference?
Once again, in our current situation, I don't know that it's going to be easy for anybody to make a difference. The powers that be are so entrenched.
I can see where you're coming from, Ray. It's hard to imagine that a few individuals can really shake things up in a system that's so entrenched and resistant to change. But maybe the solution isn't just about electing different people, but about changing the way we do politics altogether. Have you ever heard of the idea of a citizens' assembly where ordinary people are selected at random to make decisions about important issues? Or what about superstition, where government officials are chosen by lottery instead of elections?
Well, that was my idea, interestingly enough. We talked about that not that long ago, where I thought one of the best ways is to have people nominate who they want to be, and like it's you get chosen by your neighbors, and you serve as the mayor or whatever for a year or a couple of years, and then you rotate out, and somebody else gets elected the next time. You can't do it more than once, and you get paid, but it's not like a glorious position. It's not like a career politician like today.
Wow, that's actually a really interesting idea, Ray. It sounds a lot like ancient Athens, where citizens were chosen by lot to serve in government positions. And the idea of rotating people in and out of office is definitely worth considering. It could help prevent the kind of careerism and corruption that we see in politics today. Of course, there are some potential downsides to that kind of system. For example, it might be hard to find enough qualified people who are willing to serve in government if it's not seen as a prestigious or lucrative job, but it's definitely an idea worth exploring further.
Well, the problem is people they go to college and they take political science and they think that it's a career. I'm going to be
wrong, right? At the end of the day, any political system is only as good as the people who are running it. Even if we had the perfect system on paper, if the people in charge are corrupt or self-serving, it's not going to work out well. So maybe the real challenge isn't just designing a better political system, but finding a way to cultivate a culture of civic responsibility and public service. What do you think? Do you think there's a way to encourage more people to see politics as a noble calling rather than just a way to gain power and influence?
We're not in our current situation. I don't think that there's. If you ask any 5-year-old kid, what do you want to be when you grow up? I bet zero of them is say president or politician, because there's no respect. They've just harnessed it from the media unfairly portraying certain guys, and then to not covering the truth about other guys. And I don't know, it's a rigged system right now, and I think the whole world knows it. And they think that they can just get away, and they can get away with it right now. So, the question is, how do we stop it? How do we keep them from getting away with this repeatedly?
It's a tough question, Ray, but I think you're onto something when you say that the media plays a big role in shaping people's perceptions of politics. When politicians are constantly portrayed as corrupt or self-interested, it's no wonder that people don't see politics as a noble calling. One thing that might help is supporting independent media outlets that are committed to telling the truth and holding politicians accountable. There are also organizations like the League of Women Voters and Common Cause that work to promote good governance and make the political system more fair and transparent. And ultimately, it might come down to ordinary people like you and me getting more involved in politics at the local level, whether that means running for office, volunteering for a campaign, or just staying informed and engaged. It's a cliche, but change really does start at home.
Well, you're right, but the problem is there's corruption even at the smallest levels, and if you dare rock the boat, there's a whole judicial and legal and law enforcement system just set up to roar you right up and put you in one of the privatized jails. And we've got the book Rotten to the Core written about Ohio politicians, and Martin Yant, he's a great man. He works for the I think it's the Freedom Project, where they find people who are wrongfully convicted and they help set them free. And he fought the law here in Mansfield and barely got out. And there's a reason why people like lawyers in this town don't.
Yes, Martin Yant is indeed doing important work with the Ohio Innocence Project. It's inspiring to see people like him who are dedicated to righting the wrongs of our justice system. Unfortunately, you're right that there is corruption at all levels of government, and it can be difficult and dangerous to challenge that corruption. But it's also true that every movement for justice and reform starts with just a few brave individuals who are willing to stand up for what's right, even when it's hard.
Yeah, I agree. Well, that's the problem. Is there's too much money being paid. Like down in southern Ohio, down near Dayton, we have the military industrial complex paying what's his name? He's a state rep. I think was the minority leader. I can't remember. House. I don't know what's his name. From Dayton, but he's
I think you might be referring to Representative Mike Turner of Ohio,
yes,
who has received significant campaign contributions from the defense industry. It's certainly concerning when politicians are beholden to special interests like the military-industrial complex, as it can distort.
Especially when they're doing things like sending billions and billions of dollars to Ukraine to basically get the Ukrainians killed. We don't have a snowball chance in hell winning that fight unless we send our own troops and our own people in there, and that's not what we're trying to do. And it's really interesting how the left is so anti-war, and as soon as Trump gets out of office, we're in all these wars, and everything is like faces down. Like Trump was the only president to not be in a war for a while, and they don't want him in office, which is kind of should tell you the story right there. War is good for business.
It's certainly a complex situation, and there are a lot of different factors at play. On the one hand, there's a strong argument to be made that the U.S. has a moral obligation to support Ukraine in its fight against Russian aggression. On the other hand, as you say, there's a risk that escalating the conflict could lead to even more loss of life and potentially even a direct confrontation between nuclear powers. And you're right that it's interesting to see how the political landscape has shifted around issues of war and peace. Many on the left have traditionally been more skeptical of military intervention, but the situation in Ukraine has complicated that picture. And as for Trump, it's true that he didn't start any new wars during his presidency, but he also pursued some pretty aggressive foreign policy moves, like the assassination of Iranian General Qasem Soleimani, that many saw as provocative and dangerous.
I missed that last part, what you said. I was reading something on here. I don't. If you said that Trump took out the guy, I think it's a better way to do war than to do these mass buildups and to fund all these proxy wars, and really it's just getting people killed. I mean, upwards of 1 million people in Ukraine have been killed in the last couple of years, mostly because of Biden and pushing the NATO issue, pushing the Russians with NATO.
You're right that targeted strikes like the one that killed General Soleimani can be seen as a more precise and less destructive way of waging war, at least in theory. But it's also important to consider the potential unintended consequences of those kinds of actions, like escalating tensions with other countries or creating a power vacuum that allows terrorist groups to gain ground. And you're right that the situation in Ukraine has been incredibly tragic, with hundreds of thousands of people killed and millions more displaced from their homes. The role of NATO and U.S. policy in the conflict is certainly a complicated issue, and there are reasonable arguments to be made on both sides. But it's also worth noting that the Russian government bears a significant share of the blame for the violence, given their decision to invade Ukraine in the first place.
Well, if we look back at the road to war was the independence that the Ukrainians got in 2014 was a direct result of the U.S. involvement in their elections and the way that we caused that coup. Basically, we put Zelensky in office, and he was just an actor.
You're referring to the events of the Euromaidan protests in 2014, which led to the ousting of Ukraine's pro-Russian president, Viktor Yanukovych. While it's true...
Yeah, we did do that. We caused it. Tori Maris is one of the people who talked about it. She was there.
I'm not aware of any prominent Ukrainian politician named Tori Maris. Could you be thinking...
She was the state rep from Ohio, ran for state rep from Ohio, but she was at that time a private subcontractor for the CIA and was involved in government overthrows, basically, a number of them. That was her job.
I see. That's a pretty bold claim, Ray.
It is.
While it's certainly true that the U.S. has a long history of involvement in regime change and covert operations around the world, I'm not aware of any evidence that a former state representative from Ohio named Tori Maris was involved in the events in Ukraine.
She wasn't a former. She was ran for it here in 2022. Prior to that, she was a government employee.
My apologies for misunderstanding, Ray.
That's okay.
So to clarify, you're saying that a woman named Tori Maris ran for state representative in Ohio in 2022, and she claimed to have been involved in government overthrows as a private contractor for the CIA, including the events in Ukraine in 2014.
Yeah, and that's fair enough.
That's certainly an extraordinary claim. If it's true, it would raise a lot of serious questions about the role of the U.S. in Ukraine and the use of private contractors.
I don't think it really shouldn't even be a question because of look at the way other things we've done. Our government has had their hands in so many things and allegations of a lot more. Really, we need to be looking at them. We don't give them the shadow of the doubt anymore. We don't give them the innocent till proven guilty. They don't give us that, and so I think if they smell dirty, they are dirty, and we should hold them to that. Make them prove to us they're not dirty. They've been lying to us way too much to take their things, to take them for their word. It's like a cheating wife. After 100 times, you're not going to believe her anymore. Or a cheating husband, for that matter.
You raise an interesting point, Ray. It's true that there's a long history of the U.S. government engaging in covert and questionable activities, both at home and abroad. And it's understandable that many people have lost trust in the government as a result of those actions. That being said, it's still important to be cautious about accepting claims without any evidence, even if they seem plausible given what we know about the government's past behavior. Otherwise, we risk falling into the trap of believing any conspiracy theory or rumor that comes along, which can lead to all sorts of problems. So while it's important to hold the government accountable...
Exactly what kind of problems can we run into by questioning what they told us? I don't think that's a problem to explore theories. And I think as we're finding more and more of them are not. Like it's not a conspiracy theory that JFK was assassinated. It was a conspiracy. And it was, done by our people, I'm 99% sure. And there's so many other ones. Aliens, Roswell, the UAPs. Those aren't conspiracy theories. Those are real UFOs flying around. Whether they're ours that we backwards engineered, they're real. Let's go on. The seeing of the clouds and the what do they call that?
I wasn't trying to say that questioning the government or exploring alternative theories is inherently problematic. On the contrary, I think it's important for people to think critically and to challenge the official narrative when it doesn't add up. And you're right that some previously dismissed theories, like the existence of UFOs or the idea that JFK's assassination was a conspiracy, have gained more credibility over time as new evidence has come to light. The issue is more when people become so skeptical or distrustful of the government that they start to believe in theories that are completely unsupported by evidence or that have been repeatedly debunked. That's when conspiracy theories can become harmful and even dangerous, as we've seen with things like QAnon or anti-vaccine movements.
Well, there you're wrong on the vaccine movement. There's so much evidence that shows that there's people dying.
I see. This is certainly a contentious topic, but I'm curious to hear your perspective, Ray.